Hi, welcome back. Another in the security stories, and we kind of deviate a little bit because I'm going to talk about road rage. This was actually one of the viewers that wrote in, emailed me and just spoke about an incident that they had had where they had been punched when they were driving. They'd obviously stopped the car and had some sort of altercation and been attacked, and they were asking, what do I do in those sort of situations? And I've been in quite a few situations like that. Most of them were around the time when I was doing security work and I was a little younger, a little more hot-headed. And in latter years, I haven't had any of those situations. So it's probably a good little way to talk about how I now avoid getting into scrapes when I'm on the road and why I was getting into scrapes beforehand. So as a younger guy, you're full of piss and testosterone and you're kind of looking to prove things in everything you do, and I was a little bit like that myself. I tried to be humble, I was interested in the Bushido stuff, but it's difficult when you got your hormones raging. It kind of persuades you to act in some stupid ways. So certainly my driving went along those lines. I wasn't particularly a super fast driver or anything like that, but I did used to get irritated with other people on the road and kind of make that very clear. And that was the main reason that altercations happened. I never started any, I'm not someone who kind of jumps out of a car and runs towards trouble and tries to have fights with people. I've never been into that, but I've certainly inspired other people to probably want to do that to me. I remember an incident where I was driving in the snow and there was a person behind me, a car behind me. I was just driving to work. It was probably a couple of inches of snow, but because we're not really used to it in the UK, they don't clear the roads or anything like that, so they were in a bit of a state, and someone was driving right up my arse. I could see them in the mirror. They were sat right on my bumper, and I thought, this isn't going to end well. I got some traffic lights and stopped, and I saw them like lock up the car and kind of panic a bit at the wheel, and they literally stopped like an inch away from my bumper. So I got out of the car, waiting at the traffic lights, just walked behind, and I tapped on the window and I said, mate, you're driving way too close. You're driving like an idiot. You need to back the hell off. And the way I spoke to him was not probably the nicest possible way I could have engaged that situation. As an older person, I would have talked to him a little bit differently. But like I say, I was young and kind of full of testosterone. And, he didn't take that well. He was an older man. I would say he was 40. I was probably about 23 at the time, something like that. And he isn't going to have some 23-year-old talking to him in that manner. So he straight away tells me to get fucked, basically, and kind of swears, starts shouting a load of abuse at me, says he's going to kick the shit out of me. And his wife, who was equally unpleasant, started spouting off the same kind of thing. She was also going to beat me up, apparently. So the traffic lights are changing. I just sort of wave him off and go and get back in my car. And as I get back in the car, I kind of shake my head and mouth dickhead or something at him, get in the car and drive off. Again, big mistake. I didn't need to do that, but he had annoyed me. So we're now both super annoyed at each other about something that really should have just been a nice chat between two people. I drive off. He's now following me right on my bumper, like even more so, and he's clearly raging. I can see him in the mirror. Him and his wife are absolutely freaking out and, shouting and screaming, making all kinds of hand signals. They weren't the nicest people. It was pretty obvious when they opened the window and I spoke to them. They were kind of not on the pleasant side of humanity, let's say. So I carry on. I'm actually driving to work, but via a friend's house. I'm about to pick a friend up on the way. So these people are staying right on my arse. Every time I turn the car, left or right turns, they're following me. So I'm thinking, okay, now they're like gonna basically follow me the whole way. So I pull up at my friend's house. He actually looks out the window, sees me pull up, and then these people pull up behind me. I get out the car. It's still completely icy and snowy on the ground, and the guy is now trying to like reverse his car into a space just behind me, and the wife actually gets out and starts punching my car, and then she comes towards me and she's about to attack me. So I then walk towards her with my hands out. I'm going to basically try and push her away from me if she attacks me. The guy clearly sees this in the mirror, gets super angry about that, and then reverses his car really, really fast. I'm not exactly sure what he was trying to do, but what he actually did was hit his wife with his car. So because it's slippery, she kind of bounced off of his car and then went a couple of meters and then landed and skidded like right down the road. He's now got out and run over to her. She has got up and started attacking him. I turn around to my mate in the window and I'm kind of laughing, going, you know, I'm sorry dude, I don't know what the hell's going on. So I then walk into the house and think, yeah, I'm going to leave these two to it. And my mate's like, what have you brought to the front of my house, dude? These people look terrible. So they were literally fighting out there between each other for about 3 or 4 minutes. And eventually they kind of looked round and realised I'm not around. She kind of threw something at my car or whatever. It didn't do any damage. And my car wasn't the best car. I'll get to that in a minute as well. But then they get in the car. They're still screaming at each other and they drive off. But that was inspired by me. You know, what I could have done was get out the car and just say, hey buddy, you know, it's really snowy, I'm sorry to bother you, but you're driving a little close. I'm just worried that we're both going to damage our cars. Hope you don't mind me mentioning that. Thanks a lot for listening. And even if he'd have been abusive at that point, I should have just said, hey, no problem at all, you know, and got back in my car and carried on. And probably that would have avoided the situation. And a lot of people, they kind of think, well, I'm in the right, you know, so I can have my say, I can have a bit of a shout or whatever if the other person's being an idiot, but they're actually escalating the situation. And it doesn't matter in those situations if you're morally right or wrong, or if you can legally do something. You know, if you can legally shout at someone and call them an idiot, it doesn't mean that you should do it. It's not going to help the situation any. And it's going to lead to something which may end up with you going to prison, may end up with your car getting damaged, may end up with you getting damaged. You know, there's a number of pretty bad outcomes. I was very lucky that time that nothing bad happened. Another time, very similar, I was driving along with my missus at the time, and a guy comes past in the outside lane and then cuts in really close to my car, and he's doing like 100 miles an hour, so he's like a complete idiot. So I shout and then like gesticulate at the window at him. So that's the common English response, right? To shout and gesticulate at stupid drivers. And again, the guy's being a stupid driver. I'm kind of in my right to be upset about that, but I can be upset without verbalizing it outwardly. I can be upset without gesticulating and, you know, driving around in the car. I can just internalize my anger at that moment. But I chose to externalize it. So obviously this guy's looking in the mirror, because idiot drivers know that they're idiots, so they're always checking their mirrors to see what's going on and who they've upset, because they kind of want to have a confrontation. They want to have a scrap. They're not very nice people generally. He pulls up about half a mile down the road. Now what do? Because I'm young and stupid, I pull in as well, because I think I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. He's an idiot. And again, bad idea. Why on earth did I do that? Because I felt like I was in the right. I felt like I was in a position where I needed to educate this guy, you know, again, full of my own sort of self-importance. And it wasn't my job to educate that guy. You know, it's not any of our jobs to change other people's behaviour. If we're asked about other people's behaviour, you know, you can pass an opinion, but it's not our job to go around doing anything about it per se. I get out the car, the guy gets out of his car at the same time. We're in like a long lay-by on a dual carriageway. My missus is saying, don't get out, you know, the standard thing, and she was bang right. If we all listened to our wives or partners in situations like that, we'd probably be a lot better off. But of course we go, no, you know, we know best. So as I get out and he's getting out, I notice he's A, about 70 years old, B, he starts getting something out of the car, which I'm thinking, oh my God, he's getting a weapon. It wasn't a weapon, it was a pair of crutches. He's got one leg. So I've got a 70-year-old man angrily crutching towards me with one leg, saying that he's going to F me up. And I mean, this is a lose-lose situation for me. You know, on one hand, I might actually get beaten around the head multiple times with a metal crutch, and I don't really fancy that. And on the other hand, if I try to defend myself, I'll be the guy on the news story that's beaten up a disabled 70-year-old man with one leg. And if you had a picture of me back then, I was in pretty good physical shape. He was not in very good physical shape, obviously. So that wouldn't have looked good in the news. It probably wouldn't have looked good in court either. So I decided at that point, I had a moment of clarity, went back to the car, got in and just drove around him and drove off down the road. But that just goes to show that people be crazy, right? You know, he obviously couldn't have a fight to save his life, but his brain, you know, wasn't listening to the signals that his body was sending him about his own capability. He was bang up for some trouble. Now, I mentioned I had a pretty beat up car at the time, and I generally had a pretty beat up car through the whole of my security career. That was largely influenced by the film Roadhouse, as were many of my other attributes in security, because I was a child of the 80s. I used to love that kind of stuff. I had this really crappy Subaru, and it was a good engine, you know, it ran well on the inside, everything was looked after and proper, but the bodywork on the outside was pretty grim. It was pretty knackered. It was a WRX STI, so it was a rapid car, pretty cool at the time, but it looked like an absolute bag of shit. And I kept it that way because I knew that when I did security work, people would kind of eye me coming into work or whatever. I generally tried not to drive to work and, you know, be visible, but sometimes you couldn't help it, because if you were working in some inner cities, there was no parking anywhere apart from maybe the club had parking for its own staff, so you kind of had to bite the bullet there. And of course people would notice, so I'd often come back to the car and find it had more dents on it, it was covered in broken glass, and I never bothered getting any of that fixed, you know, because I didn't want to bring my insurance premiums up, and also because if I got it fixed it would just happen again like in 2 weeks time. And the nicer the car looked, to be honest, the more people would be tempted to do things to it. It ended up looking so crap that really no one bothered doing anything at all in the end. I think they just looked at it and thought, yeah, it's not even worth it. Apart from my crazy ex-missus, who she decided one night that she would do something to it. I'd split up with her, moved in with a friend, gone to work, and I'd left my car at the house. And I think I got a lift in with another security guy that was driving past. And I got a panicked phone call at work, and the guy that I was staying with said, "Your ex-wife has just broken into my house and attacked me with a hammer." I was like, oh, okay. And then I rushed back there. He had managed to shove her out the door and he had called the police, because he was a very straight-laced, nice guy. And, you know, it was a pretty scary experience for him. And she was an alcoholic and absolutely mental, which is why I'd left her. She used to attack me quite a bit. I spoke about that a little bit in the Women and Violence episode I did. But that's why I left, because she was having blackouts and just going crazy and being super violent. So I thought it was best to get out of that situation, and she managed to track me down to the place I was staying. So luckily he hadn't been hurt, but when we checked the security camera footage, we found some pretty bizarre stuff. So she had actually managed to write in very large letters on the front of my car the C-U-N-T word. So my really crappy Subaru now had a very abusive name scratched across the front of it. And even stranger, she had actually squatted on the bonnet and done a wee down the bonnet scoop, because on the Subarus you've got like a really big air intake on the bonnet, and she had managed to actually direct a pee into that. I'm not entirely sure what she thought that would do. I didn't notice anything bad about the car when I drove it. You would think it might smell a wee or something, but nothing appeared to happen. I guess it just dried up overnight. But that gives you a small insight into the kind of crazy shit that she used to do. So as I got older, you know, I kind of recalibrated a little bit, and certainly in the last few years I was doing security, I had a lot less hassle at work, because I had kind of come to the realization that I should be able to manipulate drunk people enough so that there isn't a confrontation. You know, if I'm a reasonably intelligent person, I should be able to find psychological methods to get what I want out of the situation with the least physical input possible. And frankly, with the best efficiency possible. You know, a bit of a Japanese kind of ethos of doing the work is that how can I go to work and complete my shift in the most efficient way possible without damaging myself, without damaging anyone else, and, you know, actually coming back without having to pay the dentist the money I've earned. So I was able to achieve that just by being very humble, by being pretty thoughtful, you know, having a bit of forethought about situations, making sure I preempted things, having some techniques that I would use, which I've discussed in a lot of the other videos, that were able to diffuse situations before they'd really started. And I started to practice that on the roads as well. And it really works. I drive to the speed limit, so I'm not kind of showing off being Billy Big Bollocks on the road. I'm driving sedately. I'm not cutting people up. If I do ever make a mistake, because we all make mistakes on the road sometimes, I put my hand up and I smile and I say, I'm sorry, out the window. You know, there's no point in getting arsey about it. It's not a pissing contest on the roads. That's how a lot of guys seem to see it. They're kind of playing games, overtaking each other and getting angry and, you know, accelerating. You know, I've got it a lot. If you try and go past someone and they accelerate really fast because they don't want you to go past them, I'll just pull back in. That's fine. You know, if they want to accelerate and go a bit quicker, then I've achieved what I need to achieve, which is to go a little bit quicker, and I don't actually need to go past them. You know, if they keep driving slowly again, I'll try and accelerate again and then back off if they're going to accelerate. But I'm not going to get involved in any dramatic squabbles with people on the road. Generally, people are pretty cool. I've had a few people get randomly angry with me for what reason I do not know. I had a guy come past in a BMW shaking his fist and moaning. I think I wasn't driving fast enough for his liking. It was a 60. I was driving at 60. It was a single lane road, you know, so he was probably peed off. He wanted to do like 70 or 80, so he burnt past me gesticulating and shouting through the window. I just smiled and didn't say anything, because it doesn't mean anything to me. You know, there's no point in me having like a massive verbal argument with that guy, because that can only go one way. It's only going to escalate one way. So I really don't care to get involved in that. And if there are people out there that are like really feral, unpleasant people that are desperate to have punch-ups with everyone, I don't want to be the other participant in that game. I've had way too many punch-ups in my life to need to have any more. I know what I'm capable of and what I don't want to be involved in. So I've got nothing to prove. You know, I've proved everything that I needed to myself. I'm quite happy in my own skin. I don't need to be having those sort of competitive situations with other guys. And I'm exactly the same if we go out. You know, that guys have this thing where they're always trying to sort of physically compete with one another. Who's the toughest? They're trying to work out the sort of dominance hierarchy in terms of physicality and fighting ability. And I just completely refuse to play into any of those games. You know, I don't want to be arm wrestling dudes in pubs. I don't want to be like having grappling and practicing boxing or whatever outside. You know, you see young guys do a lot of that, and it generally doesn't lead anywhere good, because it is exactly what it seems to be. You know, on the face of it, guys like talk about it like, oh, we're just having a laugh. But actually the undercurrent there is there's this dominance hierarchy situation playing out. And you see that on the roads as well. That's exactly what's happening on the roads. It's not that everyone fancies themselves as a racing driver. It's that they're trying to assert dominance over one another. And you can either play that game or not. I choose not. You know, so that is why no one attacks me anymore on the road. I haven't had any incidents of road rage for a long time, many years. I don't foresee that I'd have another one. The only thing I would imagine is if someone was incredibly mentally ill and was just having a really crazy day, then you might have a problem. But if you are a submissive driver and your point is just to get to A to B in the safest and most normal manner possible, then I'm pretty sure you're not going to have any road rage incidents at all. Guys, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. Take care. I'll catch you all next time.